nga zo shangchu langzhong de ru ji nduya du se marwa ane langzhong cheda ge sonro ja chebo ane nenga chebo wo de ne jima ji shira shia ka khabres yina ya ane nge shizu ji wo de chuya ji is.
Everyone has come today to attend a teaching on the lamp for the path to enlightenment, and this encompasses many vast things. This is a great text and a very important text. And although it's going to be quite difficult for me to extract the meaning of this, I will do the best that I can to explain what I do know. So the reason for this text is to try to show the combination of sutra and tantra and make it a very accessible path in stages for one to practice. So these are things that have been passed down from the great master Nagarjuna and the profound view lineage, and the great master Asanga from the extensive deeds lineage. And Atisha was able to combine both of these lineage into a very usable format in which one could practice quite easily. So all of this encompasses all of those the teachings of both of those great lineages. This text encompasses all of the teachings of both of those great lineages.
Then George Bell Payne what the London Bell Sumaris, Bell. Bebas then Reba Jovere, Jagger Kibatan Tawa Maris, and the Con Bell Payne, Bebasul Lel Habaji, Jayagi Dundale, and the Larry de Sumaris, Larry de Sumba Yinza, and Jagger Kibasu Passan, and Jagger Kibat Jagger Masul Shiragi, Pentu Chevus, what into Lujuaris.
So this text was, the lamp for the path to enlightenment was brought to the Tibetans because the Tibetans weren't quite as sharp as the Indian masters. So the great master Atisha knew it was necessary to make this more accessible for practitioners who weren't of sharp capacity. So he brought this text, the lamp for the path to enlightenment, to Tibet and made the stages of the path very accessible for all practitioners. And when word got back to India that this text had been written, even the Indian masters praised Atisha for the quality of composition. So then the Indian Pandits said what a great thing it was that Atisha went to Tibet to explain these teachings, because in Tibet there were very little explanations or pure explanations of teachings, whereas in India there were so many great masters and commentaries that they had access to that they weren't as impoverished relative to Dharma as the Tibetans were. So the Indian Pandits felt that it was a great gesture for Atisha to write this text and give it to the Tibetans. So then this teaching was requested by the great Shanchup Wo, who was a bodhisattva. And in Tibet at the time there were troubles with the explanations of Sutra and Tantra. And he asked Atisha, the great master Atisha, to give an explanation of the law of karma and cause and effect within the stages of the path so that the Dharma would not be so perverted. So many of the great Lotsawas and kings and so forth invited Atisha to come to Tibet to try to propagate these teachings.
Oh, that the name is on the Karshuga, that the name George, Lujan to the Nasa, then Nalentali, Nalentalita, Jaggi, then the Karsure, Keba Moncho, turns and Nalentaris, and George, Lujangia, Tombo, Nalental Lujana useris, then the Kamala Shila, what does Lujan Conkebacha useris?
So Atisha attended the great monastic university in Nalanda first, where Nalanda produced all of the great scholars of that time. And Atisha first attended there and then was able to receive teachings from various other masters, such as Kamala Shila Kongi Gegen.
Kamala
Shander.
Shila,
Mare.
the Kamala Shila, Gumba, Nalent Monastery, Kamala Shila Monastery. What the Nalent Monastery Lujan, Sededi, the name Jemaya, the Kamala Shila, Gumba.
Okay, I made a mistake. He went from Nalanda Monastery to the monastery of Kamala Shila to study.
What the Nijin Kebacha useris?
And then he was able to become a great scholar.
Kondo Danga, Samal Keba useris.
A scholar of both the Sutra and Tantric tradition, and all of the things within both of those traditions.
What did that the name that Moses appears at Tuchanos?
So many people have come to the teaching. Thank you.
Was that Namang to Lari Chemugu to that Lari Chemugu Jeta and Kalikaji waters, Marbia? Tangato Yaja Landum.
So previously we made an attempt to go through the great stages of the path by Lama Tsongkhapa, the Lam Rinpoche, and that's such a large text that it didn't seem to work out so good. So now we're going to give the Lamp for a Path to Enlightenment a try.
That Chunus Landron, Lujan to Sanagi Nabi, Tapichi Tuji Abachayoris, Larin Chamber de Inchetul Lesaris, Inchetul Demo Lesare, Larin Chamber Zigi, Larin Chamber de Jesuitris.
So maybe you have heard of many of the things in this. Now we have the Lam Rinpoche, the great exposition on the stages of the path to enlightenment in English in our hands. And this is actually a commentary on this text, the root text, the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. So now you've maybe heard of many of these things and listened to these teachings before because of the English text that we have available at this point. Yeah, interesting.
All Gadambi, Landrum device. What the Nema, the Nigermichi Lanrichim with all the Devon.
So first, the great Kadampa masters, the old Kadampas and the new Kadampas and so forth, wrote commentaries to this text, and then great masters later came and wrote commentaries on it as well. So the commentaries began with the Kadampa tradition, the Kadampa masters, and then Lama Tsongkhapa's text, and so on and so forth.
Oje tatenema de kashugo landongi jesundan ne kaju bayo sare saja bayo sare an glo wodu ngalo kadan sama wod saja kaju dene globa sonchal peju sare
Sum. So the three of the lineages of Tibetan Buddhism utilize this text: the Sakya, the Kaju, and the Galupa.
Tanyamal de Gole Dul Dati Debata Landon de Shugul Leva Injera. Nyamanga no Larit and Dudan do the Suabici Landon Deban.
So the Nyingma tradition is an older tradition, and their texts came out before the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. But if you extract the essence of those texts, you'll see that those are also written in a Lam Rim format and could be said to be a commentary on this as well.
Oje tatene Landon Dunda de Landon Dunda de Ta, Chibusung Lange Majungoras, Chibuchungoni, Chimbusung, Langerimba, Tusama, Lavo, Mata Chumatisha was.
So what is the meaning or the essence of this text? The meaning is to explain the three types of capacities: beings of the small capacity, beings of the middling capacity, and beings of the great capacity. So this very clearly explains the transition one takes through those stages of types of beings or stages of capacities.
어제 다다나 가서 매일로는 자와집을 투는 요아래 매일로는 지자게 안에 내가 쳐버려 돈다 쳐버려 매일로는 들라때네 안지 추든 로정 제바이나 내가 쳐부터 또 그래서 말봐.
At this point, we have this human basis that is so excellent and powerful and has many great qualities. And based on this, we are able to practice Dharma and ascertain the meaning of it.
Then 가서 매일로는 다는 가서 그래 에진 노블 하바인스 에진 노블 하바인스 부자몸을 송도 왔어 말봐.
There's many texts that state that the human basis is more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel.
Then 가서 에진 노보드는 근데 여바이나 되는 아주 천들을 지구인 당 칸바당 사야 동화 되는 비브리 용거만도 세셔만 변질래 배지 변도요 말이스.
If one had a wish-fulfilling jewel, then he or she could get anything they wanted from this life. Cars and houses and great things to eat and wonderful drinks. But as far as the next life goes, that wish-fulfilling jewel would not be of much benefit.
다 매일로된데 이징 노블 간데스 하고 와르스나 매일로된데 돌에 안에 가서 그래 가서 신에 내손하면 들을 제바이나 아는 가서 가봐요 말이스 내손을 매지 다시 가서 매일로된데 제도 그래스.
So why is this human basis so important? It's by utilizing this human basis that we can free ourselves from the lower realms. We have to first engage in analysis and recognize the fact that we dislike the lower realms and wish to be free from the sufferings of the lower realms. And it's by utilizing this actual human basis that we can free ourselves through practice from the lower realms.
어제 매일로된데 돌은 내손 가네 아니 된롤 사담을 로야게 아니 다시 제기나 매제도 그랬어.
So if one eradicates or abandons the causal factors for rebirth into the lower realms and practices the causal factors for rebirth into the higher realms, then one will be able to obtain a rebirth as a human or any of the other higher realm beings.
어제 당에 송고 등에도 가네 된롤 하담 멜레 안에 멜레 된롤 로야게 최고 수대 인제부 종이 줘서 그랬어. 어떤 가서 매일 된데 돌 소소 제기나 도는 것도 왔어.
So when we speak of abandoning the causal factors for rebirth into the lower realms and practicing the causal factors for rebirth into the higher realms, and this is our main motivation and goal, to be reborn into the higher realms as a human or God, then this is a teaching that falls into the small scope, or teachings for beings of small capacity.
어제 당 가서 내손을 지내 된롤 하담 멜 제바 있나야 되네 단다 동에 만난 할래 동에 요가르스 아니 만난 할래 동에 주의 동에 차반 주의 동에 되네 제가 나시 동에데 아니 만난 할래 요가르스 말바.
But then one recognizes the fact that in the higher realms there is also suffering. The gods and humans and so forth have to deal with the suffering of change, the suffering of suffering, the pervasive compounded suffering, the suffering of uncertainty. So we would find all of these types of sufferings in the higher realms as well of gods and humans.
어제 다 마당 하단 다 가데 동에 대마서 그래서 말바 동에 대마 조건라 되는 중원에서 군중라 되는 중원에서 레당 녀모벌 되는 중원에서.
So this is the truth of suffering. Then it's necessary to find the truth of origin. And the truth of origin are the karma and afflictions which throw one into the truth of suffering.
어제 다 되네 동에 주 자와데 덴질 도도와르스 덴지 아니 덴지데 메바조야 되네 지분딩이 중고들라 아니 라바송들스 라바송 주진지 라바 딩은지 라바 셰럭 라바송 용거르스 말바.
So then when one recognizes these various types of suffering and wishes to abandon them, then he or she becomes a being of the medium capacity, wishing for themselves alone to abandon these sufferings even of the higher realms. And then it's necessary for that type of being to engage in the practice of the 3 higher trainings, the higher training of ethics, the higher training of concentration, and the higher training of wisdom. So then this being eradicates the root cause of the suffering, which is the grasping at true existence, the grasping denzin, the grasping at true existence, which causes the suffering. So this being engages in the practice of the 3 higher trainings to eradicate that grasping at true existence, which causes suffering.
Wisdom, 3 trainings or wisdom?
Concentration and ethics.
답변한다는 인사를 나도 신 죄가 있나 신 처부 죄가 있나 신도 죄게 뭐데 조부 담을 고아르스 조부 담으면 신 죄도 말이스 그 조부 담을 여바 있나 라바 담으면 죄도 말이스 니고도 와스 라바도 조부 담을 있나야 아니 전라다 천천의 아버지면 죄도 와스 대송의 아버 여바 있나 신들 라바 죄도 와스 대나지 있는 가서 아니 동해도 그 ane denze da nyomo batoso ane pamala ane chuting lue temba gores ane kaso chuting lue temba gores dene toni la me bitenga zin temba gores toni la me bitenga zin santen tem mena ane denze da nyomo to ne to ayo mares dene toni la me bitenga zin temba yo ba ina ya toni la me hatung de me ba ina 천천하게 하동도 매나 아니 녀모보다 시리바 본토고 말이스 대인소자 안에 제본딩게 안에 가지고 그래 제본딩게 주고서 그러다 그 동을 다하게 안에 라서 그래 타오르시빌라 안에 주진 딩에서 싫어 라바 송용하도 딩스르스.
There's an example given of cutting down a tree. If one wants to cut down a tree, it's necessary to have a very stable body. To cut down a tree. But if the body is stable but the arm isn't very stable, then it won't be possible to cut down the tree. But if you have both a stable body and a stable arm, you're on your way to being able to cut down a tree. But one also needs an axe or a very sharp sword in order to cut down the tree. So if these 3 factors are not present, then the tree can't be cut down. But if all of these 3 factors are present, then it's very easy to cut down the tree. Likewise, if one doesn't have a very stable foundation in ethics, then that stable foundation will not be able to produce the latter concentrations that are necessary in order for one to progress on the path. And if one needs to have the single-pointed concentration, which uses emptiness as its object of observation in order to progress on the path and to eradicate the unpleasant states one does not wish to endure. So it's necessary to have the single-pointed concentration that uses emptiness as its object of observation. But then it's also necessary to have the special insight that the single-pointed concentration produces, and that's the wisdom. So it's necessary to have the ethics as a foundation, the concentration that uses its concentrates solely on emptiness as its object of observation, and then to have the special insight that produces. So if all 3 things are present, then one can eradicate the afflictive obstructions, the obstructions to omniscience, and the afflictions and so forth, which cause cyclic existence in the first place. So it's necessary to get rid of the causal factors or the roots of cyclic existence in order to be free from cyclic existence altogether. So the medium scope practitioner utilizes these 3 higher trainings, like someone chopping wood utilizes those 3 forms of the body in order to be free from negative states.
어제 다 저번 딩이 주고도 왔던 라바송라 되네 안 동에 주던 제가 가네 타발로야 와 되게 네 라니 집어 안에 타바 돈도 삼바요 걔게 되네 와 라니 집어 는 타바 돈도 상로요 걔들 저번 딩이 테메 봐서 말이야 테메 바레스 이나야 티젠바게야 저번 딩이 다 중국 그 녀술래야 그가 녀술래고 그랬어 도모스.
So this medium scope is what we call the Hinayana, or the lesser vehicle teachings. The medium scope is for beings who wish to escape cyclic existence for themselves alone, for their own benefit, without focusing on others. So this becomes the medium scope, which is the Hinayana teachings. Now, it's not to say, though, that the great scope doesn't utilize the topics within the small scope and the medium scope. And this is why these scopes are called teachings shared in common with beings of a small capacity, teachings shared in common with beings of a medium capacity, because they're shared in common with the great scope, but they do not encompass all of the ideas of the great scope, but they are necessary prerequisites.
That's not contact Jevontin, the Demba Je, then the Lajuni going to call to call it do it or to Sulamine, anything else going out than his Amadua.
So within the medium scope, we'll find the explanation of the two truths and the four truths and the 12 links of dependent origination, and all of these are indisposable on the path. The understanding of all of these things are indisposable on the path.
Or the Rani Jibi Chedo, call Tandu Samba, you can what the Land.
So one who does all of their practices to achieve the goal of nirvana or liberation for themselves alone, all of those beings who engage in practices to achieve that goal are called beings of medium capacity or Hinayana practitioners.
다양 기본적인 중국에서 개는 가서 나지 개와나면 되는 상황에서 말이스 개와래고 말이스 도망 가서 상로대 출을 상로 최종 가서 저 중의 최대 냐서래고 말이스 되는 롯데 세토를 내서는 링이 주냐서래 될래 야토를 내서는 제비 신비 주냐서래 어떤 이 말이스.
So we can't say that these scopes or capacities are mutually exclusive like the difference between myself and other. We can't say that they are mutually exclusive. What we can say is that it's necessary to familiarize yourself with the small scope and build up more of an understanding and more of a practice within the small scope. And then once realization is achieved within the small scope, then one can move on to the medium scope and do the practices that are prescribed within the medium scope. And then once realization is achieved in the medium scope, then one moves on to the great scope. So all of these topics within the various scopes leading up to the great scope are necessary prerequisites to achieve the realizations of the highest scope.
Very
similar to going to school. First one has to go to the first grade, and then to the second grade, and then to the third grade. It's necessary to go to school in those stages. So when we arrive at the great scope, or the teachings for beings of great capacity, the main root of these teachings is the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or bodhicitta. And there are two ways to achieve bodhicitta, or the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and two lineages of teachings to achieve those effects. The first one passed down from the great master Maitreya to a Sangha in the extensive deeds lineage called 7-point cause and effect for achieving bodhicitta. And the second lineage, the profound view lineage, passed down from Manjushri to Nagarjuna, Shantideva, etc., was called the equalizing and exchanging self and others lineages. So here are two lineages of instruction on how to achieve the mind that aspires to enlightenment.
Then Judice, Hag Wanjune, and Halujune, and then Hagalan Yasan Suji, and then Larry would choose yours.
So then, if one becomes very familiar and has a stable foundation in the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or bodhicitta, then it's appropriate for that type of person to engage in initiations and to do tantric practice and so forth. So it's necessary to go through those levels to achieve the mind that aspires to enlightenment, to have a successful practice of Tantra.
What is that? Larin Chamber Jeremy Larin Chamber Buddhi or Burgitula, Buddhi, the Italian Han Yuji or that could ndoshu de putu chebare on de putu jinang lo shungo marwa de ngagren ba de ngarin chimbo yang putu lo gayo waris jermuji.
So the great master, Lama Tsongkhapa, wrote the Great Exposition on the Stages of the Path, and there's very little information in that text on Tantra. He wrote only a very small section on the stages of Tantra, because he then wrote the Great Exposition on the Stages of the Tantric Path, which was a large book as well. The Great Exposition on the Stages of the Path was around 800 pages, and so was the Tantric Path. So both books were written by Lama Tsongkhapa, and because he was going to write this more extensive explanation of Tantra, he did not include very much in the Great Exposition on the Stages of the Path. So it was the stages of the path according to the perfection vehicle, and the stages of the path according to the tantric vehicle were explained, and how to combine them by using these two texts.
Oje dadene ma gashu gore dadene ngan langdon deba jindus langdon deba. What the peji lasa le jude gen langrimba peji in dabundu de gen langrimba. Ti gochu kusung deba zunduwa. Gochu kusung deba zudu gochu kusung nga bel ndudu gochu kojil nduwa. Kusung deba zuyin bare. Koji gonga de gen gumba zure. O kumbaja keba jirares gen langrimba peji gen dabundu gen langrimba. What the Kongi and Japon, then all Laricham and Loma was on it, Laza and what the Loma Tremoris. Uncle Baja Keba is Veggie than Dabus.
So here I have a commentary on Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, and I believe it was a great scholar who was from the olden days in Lhasa. I think I was 33 Lo Guchu Gusum.
1993. The Pushat did you
Chitong Gocha
1093. 1000 is a man.
Gusum Chitong Gocha Gusum 1993.
PG what the Pushat did you is the teachers.
So I believe that this text was composed by a great master such as Geshe Lharampa in Lhasa, back in Tibet in the olden days. So I'm not exactly sure of that, but I believe it was by Geshe Lharampa. Translator's note, not the Geshe Lharampa everyone's familiar with, who's written texts in English. This is a different Geshe Lharampa who was very famous in Tibet before 1959. This actual text was compiled, I believe, in 1993 and put together in a readable format. And I also, while I was in Lhasa, received many teachings on the Lamrim Chemo and commentaries and so forth on this text.
Oh, the name Kashugore, Julian Shagors, Julian Kalamazan de Waters, Ravij Sago Nagarina, then Kalamazan, then Digu, and then Lazal Gang tape because of Kot Genres, and then Devon Lullaji de Ajumoris.
Yanjasuranam.
Kon Kalasago. Ravij said, Chukumaton, then Digores. Then the Jagamisi numbers, Kalasamo, the children Devon Lullaji.
Okay. So during the, when all of the monks were imprisoned, there's a story of Geshe Lharampa who did not need to eat food. He was able to get by on one pill that he took that was a special pill and drink hot water, and he didn't need anything else other than that. And the Chinese recognized this when he was imprisoned and said, if this is the case, if you don't need to eat, they might have become fearful, and they let him go back to Drepung because he didn't eat and didn't seem to need to.
Oh, the next one, Kong Kebachevera, then the Jemal Jagate, Hulu Chayondul, then Kong Larichim Sonju, Sonju Vijay materials.
So then this teaching was given and was explained very, very thoroughly, maybe to 10,000 people.
Or Lotabalo, Sagandal Nango in Jinawars.
So it seems as Sakadawa now, every year now, they explain the Great Exposition on the Stages of the Path, which is the commentary to this text.
What did the Gelanim and Debat, Kun Debat Andus again, Ando Kebajireshas, Ando. Kun Devon Teba is the Gelanim Bajinabure.
And then there was another master from Amdo who composed this text, and he was the one who said that this was possibly from Gendlam Rinpa.
와 공다 데바들 데네 데바들 데네 송드샤 다 물론 유선 동아 용도 라지도 디비디네 비용사 상주 라지 드마 이와샤 들란데 자유 손으로 군지 내뒤바스 자유 손으로 군지 내뒤바 자유 손으로 군지 내뒤바 신다 점 루루도 도면이지 랑수 제부 손지 개된지 제부 상제지 사드비 주주기 출로 제부 손지 랑냥순래비 림바 타다 마상아메바 뒤비 상주 랑지 드마 셰샤와 용수 잡았네 강시바샤 최소스 다 랑린 첨부거들 랑린 첨부 랑린 첨부는 어디요로와 다 랑린 첨부도 요바도 어디서 꾸어나온도와 랑린 첨부 사지도 말이면 사지 놓으려 다데 다 간데 랑런데 제부송가 랑지르마 넘바도 그걸 넣어요 말이스 넣어요 말이스 마노아 넣어요 말이스 넣어요 말이스
Nutrayo mare.
no juice ko rong se ro ba noro nga no sha se yo ro
Yeah, just.
ma no ta ba kong ge jibo song ge lang ji re ba song sha ba de so ko lo no tri yo ma res bu da ba res clean res on no tri yo ma res ko to song de.
So here, at the beginning of this commentary, it states that the stages of the path to enlightenment, or the Lam Rim, this will be explained in a very clear format, and there will not be any convolution or anything that distorts the meaning of the stages of the path. So here, this is the beginning of the commentary.
신다 제모 루루도 도면이 지랑수 신다 제모 다게 로즈 주거로다 신다 제모 루루도 도면이 랑수스는 가르스나 되네 선지 시조가 뒤를 선지 시조가 뒤를 티진 대면 그걸로 티진 대면 추가 제부 와르스 선지 주걸 되네 렘베 선지 고냥하는데 아니 티진게 상주 선바 속에 티바 제미 주도 상황제데 안 대면 주도 제부 다 송어스 시다 마와다 너도 봐도 제부 다 안 티진 그때마다 냐송어스 말베.
So at the time when Buddha was present, both the sutric and all of the teachings of the Hinayana, all of the teachings of the Hinayana and the Mahayana were flourishing. And then when Buddha passed into nirvana, it seemed like the Mahayana teachings became more secretive and were held by various bodhisattvas. The lineages were held by various bodhisattvas. But the Hinayana teachings of the Shedamawa, or the Great Exposition School, and the Sutra School, the Hinayana sects were prospering during that time. So it was necessary to bring back the Mahayana teachings because they had disintegrated, and the Hinayana teachings were so prevalent after Buddha passed to nirvana.
아니 대바 준비 시신은 도당 되는 가서 우리 젠드도 송서 우리 봐 젠드도 송다 싫어진부터 손놓을래 조 대바만 아니 추는 대바만 주세야도 그걸로 아니 제다만도 봐서게 어디서 다 매송도 송도 그거 대진게 추 말해서 더 로다 된 것도 아니 시신은 도 그걸로 아니 로다 된 것도 대인송 상제가 송 말해서 고반되고 그랬어.
And at that time, the Hinayana practitioners looked at such texts as the Heart Sutra and saw that the Heart Sutra said, no eye, no ear, no nose, and felt that that was nihilism, and felt that this was not a great vehicle dharma, that it was actually wrong view because of their misinterpretation of the text, the Heart Sutra. So the Hinayanists at that time did not believe that this was an accurate teaching by Buddha.
어제 다드네 셔라진보다 제대도서 그것도 돈이 된다고 그랬어. 대바마루 슐랑그리 뭐 초랑줄랑 동랑고랑 대야다 온가든가도 바랑가도 바라상가도 무대에서 와서 랑그리 뭐 초랑의 줄랑 동랑 연로야도 버림바 된다고 그랬어. 어디서 그걸로 안에 냐는 그랬어 말이야. So
then it was slowly people understood that the Heart Sutra encompassed the various stages of the path, of the Mahayana path, the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, the path of no more learning, and could see that the mantra within the Heart Sutra, Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhisoha, explained in a very condensed format those 5 stages or those 5 Mahayana paths.
어제 다들 많이요. 산제 고냥을내는 로 제작을 뒤서 고물로 자가 로슈로 고물로 배버스. 로주 배에 놀루유네 시신도 약해네. 근데 오마레 수조라서 봤다네. 추나 대바마도 세우서 버스. 오마비 신다 수행해 버스.
So then about 400 years after the passing of Buddha, a great master named Nagarjuna arrived, and Nagarjuna was able to write commentaries in the root text on wisdom to clarify the meaning of these things, meaning that they are not truly established. That it does not mean that they do not exist. They are dependently originate because of their because of dependent origination, they are not truly established or not truly existent. So this was clarified by Master Nagarjuna.
어제 달랑은 올레메 돈이 주비 레바 뭐된다는 거와 돈이 주비 추나 대바마 주비 네 덴데라 소비 대바마 주비 주세 뭐 올마 시에그레스 돈이 주비 다뭐 어디서 거 로두고 존세 두용하레스 말베
The Shanchu Landun.
올 돈이 주비 레바 뭐도와.
So in the lamp for the path of enlightenment, later on in the text, we can find a lot of formulas given to explain emptiness, about dependent origination, using dependent origination as the sign that things do not truly exist or are not truly established. And the explanations that are given by Lord Atisha in the latter part of this text are the same explanations that were given by the great master Nagarjuna.
다데네 센상비 티바 쳔비 센상비 수다 안에 랑그 렘바 두고 많이 야바데 로면 파바 도메게 신디 수인지 버스 말베 로면 파바 도메게 안에 로샤간 레 자와 샤망고 볼로 주니 바두 자와 샴비 시제네 상가야 가넬 치네 몰롱가 주그리 로존제네 안에 샹추 등알라 수보 마케네 안에 상가기 랑드 렘바 두 모티 버스.
And then at that point the Mahayana school Chittamantran the Mahayana school, the Chittamantran school, or mind-only school, had disintegrated, as well as I think previously I forgot to say, the Madhyamika school was Nagarjuna's school. The Semsampa school, or the mind-only school, had degenerated, and then Asanga brought those views back. Asanga spent 12 years meditating on Lord Maitreya to try to be able to see him in person. And after 12 years and a series of events, he was able to have a mind generation moment, and then meet with Lord Maitreya, who brought him up to Ganden and taught him the 5 great treaties of Maitreya, and then Sangha brought them back to our world system. So this was the beginning of the repropagation of the Chittamantran school.
So then at
And then in these texts we can find a very clear explanation of what one does on the path of accumulation, what happens on the path of preparation, what happens on the path of seeing, what happens on the path of meditation, and what happens on the path of no more learning.
저는 집을 총회랑 딩게랑 집을 집이랑 어떤 정도로 세부 조언을 저러다 로드게 가서 그래 설명 도면에 가서 그래 신다 수지 잡아 뒤잡아도 어때이 말 로드는 도면이 랑수니자데 조직을 랑는 요아르스.
So then Atisha took both of these lineages. They are explanations of the stages of each of the lineages, explanation of the stages of the path for small scope, medium scope, and great scope, and then encompass both of these lineages of Asanga and Nagarjuna into one, and was able to be the holder of both of these lineages.
어다다 게네지 제보 산지 사트비 주주고 줄로스 다 제나는 산지가 어디서 거르스 신전 단지를 신전 걸로 산지하고 내봐요 지바레스 신전 단지를 산지가 리기 쳐도요레스 그걸로 산지가 이지시바 안에 이지시바 senjen tanjil sanji rigi chadyo sunson senjen ngalo susu ngone kali jagi na kanga sanji ayo jibares wadu sondu waris marbe.
All sentient beings have the ability to become fully enlightened Buddhas. It is not saying that beings don't all have that capacity, because all beings possess a mental consciousness. That mental consciousness has no nature from its own side, so it's possible for all sentient beings to become Buddhas, and that is why we state that all sentient beings have Buddha potential or Buddha nature.
Oda sanji ri yese de iji sheba dres iji sheba ga nalu le docha kono la so lo she ri de sanji ri re go maris iji sheba lo she ma yin bi iji sheba de nga so ne ju ji she de iji sheba shamba da ni ji da odan de iji sheba zung ga sanji ri res.
So when we speak of mental consciousness as a reason, we're not saying that the attachments in our mental consciousness and the angers and our delusions and ignorance and all of these things within our mental consciousness are the actual Buddha potential. It's the antithesis of those things, the antithesis of those wrong consciousness, because those are all mistaken views and wrong consciousness. And when you have the opposite of those, then that becomes the Buddha nature or Buddha potential.
Oji iji sheba de tende in so chuk ngolo tende demba marubaris iji sheba demba maruba de an sanji gris iji sheba kono sanji gri tanji chemba chanu goris iji sheba demba maruba de an ngode kasu gore chuku chanu chuku marbe.
So because the mental consciousness depends on where we live, that mental consciousness is not truly established and has no true essence or true establishment. So it's because of this lack of true establishment that the mind can become omniscient, and the mind can then achieve the state of the Dharmakaya.
Oji sanji ri yo ken kawa dan den bi doja to sanji sal ndobala an sanji sal taw dan shero nyaso le bi chu o to sun de ne do gos marbe.
So then it also explains that if one wishes to arrive at the state of complete Buddhahood, then it's necessary to have both method and wisdom. It's necessary to have both of those things in order to achieve the goal.
Ta jebo sonje lanje remba jebo sonje lanje remba nyaso lang ra sha remba ta da ma sang ma ba du bi shang chu lanje de ma she sha was jebo song lanje remba ta da ma sang ma ba du ne tuen bi drum da ma drum light de ba ba ina ane na khud me ba cha kham ba ne chu ga thong yu was Shanchu Landron de and light numbers, Shanchu Landron Tagina, and Jibunting Lankande Yime, Chungu Lankande Yime, Jibi Chimbi Lankande Yime, Sanji Guntu, Tau the Shadow Kanda Kanda what to Golo, Tony Waters, Luna, what is it?
So the lamp for the path to enlightenment, the reason for the word lamp here is it's very similar to a room that is dark. When there is a light turned on, then it's very clear what's inside of that room. Likewise, if it's very clear what are the stages for someone of small capacity, what are the stages of beings of medium capacity, what are the stages of beings of great capacity, then one will be able to understand them. So this is the reason it's called the lamp, because it clarifies or elucidates these various types of scopes.
Tapananga to Muslim Zeba in a Kuru Zeba in the Kuru Tomarvata, Shegun Degi in a Tongo, Shegun Dena to go Kuru Kanayim, but then Sheturva. Then Naji and the Sanjik and Dotan Hata, or to Zungalo Shedak Butaboris, Tsitan, and the Sinu to Zungalo Shedan Zebo, Nijibu Radio Ares, Nijibu Yoba de, and the Shanchulandula den Sheturis, Rajin Zeba in Bate, Molula den Shegun, Rabin.
So it's very similar to one who has a beautiful face. One doesn't know if their face is beautiful or not unless they examine it by using a mirror and looking in a mirror, and then that mirror reflects the face, and then one can say that face has good characteristics and so forth. Likewise, one needs to use all of the great texts and so forth in order to clarify whether or not one's practice is proper or not. So it's necessary to use texts like the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment as a clarifier to our actual practice to see if we're understanding things correctly of the sutra and tantric tradition.
ngodu jen se do ngazu ngodu jen abasama alankar samarbe jen de la son yoars ranjing gi jen zeje gi jen seje gi jen ranjing gi jen de son sanje gi shira ne bula so to zungal ranjing gi jen mesheda gi zo zebun namudres zeje ranjing gi jen shida bu da bres zeje gi jen de dong oba do ba je dende langre ma je yore den zeje gi jen res ngazu anjul da jen jana mo du na bi mo de dong oba do ba je zeje gi jen seje gi jen dong do jen res mulong da mo res dong oba do ba je ranjing gi jen dong oba do ba zeje gi jen dong oba do ba je je de je de du song chudun de kala den she tu res na seje gi jen mulong da mo de ngodu jen la den she tu res o den do son da bi yeah
the jensum nge jesum nama nge shingyu nge the jensum jesum
me zebu joro me kuron zebu yi dongwa jung goro te ranjing jens ranjing kuron damen yin hi jebu re joro ranjing jens den del ko anjul ta ya da ji ji mo jensan jong do ku dele pu da ya ndo mar be zeje gi jens mar be jensa da de zebu cha ro zeje gi jens seje gi jens na den molong ku chön mar be molong
donagare
molong mira
시고
시군 된 시고로 어떤 나무 인사래 뭐도 이제 시군 나무다 젠데 두선 산지가 손으로 들고 말하진 제번 나무데 델레 랑그레바 제요로 와데 제제 나무 제자 나무 데 간라데네 셰도 그러스나 세제 그제 뭐도 젠라데네 셰도 그레스 산지가 또 하두제 아버지다레스 왜 답을 임바데 간라데네 셰도 그러스나 세제 그제 랑드라데네 셰도 그레스 어디서 나무.
So I'm not going to be clear on all of this, I apologize, but in the Abhisama Alamkara, the ornament for clear realization, it is stated that there's a meaning to the ornament. And one of the ornaments is like a mirror that you can see the reflection of your practice on. So it's like a clarifier or an ornament. And by practicing the things in it, one becomes like an ornament. One's beauty becomes like an ornament. And then by doing the various practices that are contained within it, it's similar to putting on ornaments because it makes one even more beautiful, the ethics and so forth. So seek further clarification on the three kinds of ornaments. I don't want to waste a lot of time, but I can get them for everyone next week. If what I just said wasn't completely clear, I'll check into it next week.
다 랑르드 마치발 다데 랑르드 데바데 사지 되긴도와 토마거와 레지든 바도거와 용기든 타마거와 용기든 다 간데 헌로 응원진 조송 송이사다 헌로 던데 사지 송 되용도 사지 송 주든 간데도 게시 전어를 데바데 말아
Delpa kermasan.
알로 던디다 토마거와 레지든 사 토마거와 레지든 바도거와 용기든 타마거와 용기든 담부 천든 당 유샤니스 담부 천든 다 천든스나 랑드게 되네 미로미 나도 와디 요네 메시지 랑드게 미 가르스나 벽이 돌지는 랑드게 미를 가르스 그래 산드다게 돌 가르스 그래 랑드게 미들에 자가게도 부드바다 반데방 어디 산드다게 돌 랑드게 미데 자가게도 부드바다 반데방 셰녜진사 산드다게 돌 랑드게 센데 부드바다 반데방 스그레스 벽에도 센조바이나 샤추 랑주 드라마 스그레스 샤추 랑주 드라마 말베
So the beginning of the text explains this is the name in Tibetan, this is the name in Sanskrit. So the name in Tibetan is the Shanchup Landun, and the name in Sanskrit is the Bodhipata Pradipam. So this is the name in Sanskrit. So the beginning of the text Rinpoche is using explains the two names of the text, explanation of name in Tibetan and Sanskrit.
다 보드스나 샹추 라고스 샹추로 말베 보드스나 샹추 라고스 샹추슨 레보르 베그레
Enlightenment.
샹추로 봐 샹추들라 보드스나 샹추레스 보드 샹추 Buddhist shangchu de la jedane ane shangchu song yoares. Nye tuji shangchu, rangje ji shangchu, tiba chenpi shangchu song yung kores shangchu. Lala ne nye tui shangchu chu de sen je do, lala ne rangje shangchu chu de sen je do, lala ne tiba chenpi shangchu chu de sen je do, sanje ge nendo le wa ka song yung do.
So here, the Bodhi in the Bodhipatta Pradhanapam, Bodhi here stands for enlightenment. And there are three types of enlightenment. There are the enlightenment of the hearer, the enlightenment of the hearers, enlightenment of the solitary realizers, and the enlightenment of the Mahayanist, or the Bodhisattvayana vehicle. So here, enlightenments can be divided into three.
Nitule Tolong Jolong Tolong Kolang Marulanga Yorova, Rajelanga, Tijelanga Yumarve. Dajumbi Juju go then down and the land to Galo Shanchu Logres, Nituki Shanchu. Nitu Dajumbi Juji go then down and the Malulan to Sula, Nituji Shanchu. Raje Dajumbi Juji Landan go then to Sula and then Rajeji Shanchu. Sanji Tuji go then down, Tanji Chambazula, Tiba Chambi Shanchu is Marbe.
So there are basically 15 paths of the hearers, if you combine them, the hearer, the solitary realizer, and the Mahayanist. There are the path of accumulation, path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning of the hearer, and etc. So the path of meditation, the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning for the solitary realizers, and the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning for the bodhisattvas. So each of these paths produce different kinds of things. When one reaches the path, the cessation at the path of no more learning in the hearer's vehicle, then they become a foe destroyer. And likewise for the solitary realizers. But the bodhisattva vehicle, or the Mahayana vehicle, one surpasses the path of no more learning and reaches the stage of omniscience at their cessation. So this is the difference in level of cessation between these three types of vehicles. The two lower ones reach the state of foe destroyer, which lacks omniscience, and the higher vehicle of the Mahayana, after progressing through the five paths, reaches the stage of omniscience.
Shanchu, Netuki Shanchu, Ranje Shanchu, Tejing Shanchu, Royal Lankan, Yorisana, Solon Julon, what in the Shim. No you know ina, no you to Shanchu Swetje, and no you know the Modat and the Langat Sheguno, Langate, Kavanuguna, and no you know Land Shegu, then Ravi Saman.
Then the Sandrike got it, Bodhi.
Pata. Okay. Shanchu. Tibasung Shanchuchi, Shanchul Royal Lang Countries and the Patas, and Tolang.
So the next part is Pata, and this stands for path. And path here refers to the various paths that are necessary to traverse amongst the three vehicles. Very similar if one wants to go to New York City. It's necessary to have the car, and it's necessary to know what roads to drive on so that you can arrive at that goal. Likewise, it's necessary to know what paths to take in order to achieve the realizations of the hearers. What path to take to achieve the realization of the solitary realizer. What path to take to achieve the realization of the Mahayanist. So here path refers to road to a certain destination and the correct road. So that's the path, or pata in the Sanskrit.
Then you took Shanchu to Yoba and you took Lang Kanagan Johnson Languages, Nanjuk Sambatan, Tolan, and Logus on the inside.
So first we would arrive at the hearers. What is the hearer's path? First, the hearer must achieve the state of renunciation, and then they arrive at the path of accumulation, and then move on through the various stages from there. So this is the meaning of path.
Then Rajel Shanchul Yoba and then Nanjuk Sambatan, Rajel Lang Karan Language, what in the Johnson language. So then teaching things.
So then we move on to the solitary realizer. What does the solitary realizer do? They must first achieve the path achieve the state of renunciation, and then traverse their 5 paths. So it's necessary to explain what those 5 paths are instead of to make it clear, and the same follows for the Mahayana paths.
다들 장주를 줘야 랑데 집에 중위랑 딩기랑 집에 집이랑 무슨 바타 어디서 거는지 말বে 집에 중위랑 딩기랑 집에 침비랑 바타 어디서 냐래 지기나 네트워크 장주를 해도 그래 랑제기 장주를 해도 그래 티베탄 침비 장주를 해도 그래.
So here pata means the path of a being of small capacity, the path of a being of medium capacity, the path of a being of great capacity. What is the path for a hearer to achieve enlightenment? What is the path for a solitary realizer to achieve enlightenment? What is the path of a bodhisattva to achieve enlightenment? So here pata refers to those things.
What does it mean? That is tapande pensea the drummer drummers and ngaso böle shinju shin shin the mobile ba kama luyo maro shin mobile and gonda sen losing the kamba no and jala nga tongro drummers yat lo namre landon la dene and the shanchu song she to gore shanchu song the draba she be chungun la dingi la chembi la what they and Solange and Tolong, what the Nezu can go Sebish to das, Drummer Dover is Marbe.
Droma de Shin Dang Mei.
Shil Moban.
Okay, so here, the next part is the Pradipam, and this refers to the lamp part of this. Actually, torch. In ancient times, they used the stick and set the top on fire, and it made a torch. So here, this is really what it was referring to at that time, was a torch. And this torch is able to elucidate the path of the small scope, the path of the medium scope, the path of the great scope, the path of the hearer. How does one get to a hearer's enlightenment? How does one get to a solitary realizer's enlightenment and a bodhisattva enlightenment? It's necessary to be able to see the path in order to traverse it. So this is the reason for the pradnapam, which is torch, or here in the English translation, lamp. Tibetan landun.
Tani badane josha segoro josha jambe shanju on shanju semba jambe junu jubala shaselos jambe junu juban joshas ane böge kama dane sanji go sonro to ngalo pali dan sante de ke tuluyoruz jagal pali dan sante de ke tuluyoruz what the yobade dane jana soki jana ke tul fa junu go jere baba so be go tul juyores marbe 로자기 벽에 드는 로자 베지 최제 마변 나선 손생 감모 처송 디자인 처송 손생 감모 셴레지 주바레스 손생 감비 되스 베지시라 주도 아유 자양 그 주바 처송 디자인 되래 안에 벼주 안에 리바 잠보 뭐 자갈 당버스 자갈 당나 안에 산드다다 나렌다다 도지된다 어두슬레 산드다다 빨리 장준 안에 소아지게 주 빨리 당 산드대게도 여바도 벽에 돌죠 용화레스 주칼라마데 지준 잠배용을 샤세고 그랬어 말이야.
Then the Trisung Detsen Jambyang Chupa.
Trisung Detsen 비진 장하고 주바.
So here it says homage to the Bodhisattva, the youthful Manjushri. During various times of Sun Gampo and all of the different kings, and especially Trisung Detsen, Rinpoche believes it was the king Trisung Detsen. Various translators were sent to India to translate these Buddhist texts from Pali and Sanskrit into Tibetan language. And they also went to China with translators and in various other places. But these texts were translated then into English. And Trisung Detsen was said to be an emanation of Manjushri. So here we pay homage to the Bodhisattva, the youthful Manjushri.
What the dul sai zolakans pigile hasal jolu den sai zolak chimjin bare zolak sai go zolak debeji tsun design bare tsun design de dul ane bema sambawa den ju bare dene kamala shela den ju kaza kejin shiwa zoro kejin shiwa zo odu den ju ne böge dabasaba do odu ju bare.
So then various other masters were able to bring the teachings to Tibet start with Padmasambhava coming and bringing various teachings, and Chandarashita, and then Kamalashila, and various masters bringing these traditions into Tibet from the Pali and Sanskrit.
What the deal better moment in the Ruji Sobanam than the Zune, then Sunday day get to the Pali to Yobakan Bergi to Jugors, and Jabu Tinzors, Tin Law, Tinzune. That then Sanjig is the dinner Soma to Yomaris, maybe dinner, do you dinner, do dinner son Yomaris. That lots of Chuchu, the Jackie and Bergi Jews to Tugris, Matuba Shaishido, maybe dinner radio Ina. Golden Jambe on the shots has.
Mupi.
Maybe dinner. Abadama.
Chunupi Zoo.
Abadama dinner is na. Maybe dinner. Do you dinner? Mana Sutra. Belgasura.
3 baskets.
What this is? Maybe dinner. Abadama Karasura. Basket is where. Abadama Bazaka, Mana Sutra basket.
Sutra basket.
Then anything is.
Sutra basket.
What they saw you there. This one to say you the true young is, and Jabuk teens in it. And the lots of Sula. The name maybe the radio and Uncle and Jambe on the Chuba Juas. Do the dinner radio and a Sanjit and Sanju Sambal Chuba Juice. Do you dinner in a Tanji Sambal Shatsalos? Gul what the Zugus? What did you do? The double inside it?
The Dowa Gare.
Tanji Sambal
Tanji Champa, omniscience.
So
during this time, the king, they had various groups that got together, and they would go over the Pali and the Sanskrit and translate it into Tibetan to make sure that it was clear. And the king made a law at that time that one needed to put a certain homage at the beginning of the text, depending on whether it was a text of the Abhidharma, text of the Vinaya basket, or a text of the Sutra basket. So the king said that it was necessary, if it was of the Abhidharma basket, to pay homage to Manjushri. And if it was something of the Vinaya basket, to pay homage to omniscience. And if it was something from the Sutra basket, there would be a homage at the beginning to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So here the differentiation was made, and this is why we see a homage also at the beginning to the youthful Manjushri.
What the next one was a busy what in the English. That London did not lula, dinner soon Jojak no Yodu you are there, so maybe dinner more uses. The Insudan Jan Chobajubaris, Jan Shatsabaris.
So even though we can see hints of all these other baskets in the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, the Vinaya and the Sutra, there's more of an emphasis on the Abhidharma basket, and that is why the homage to Manjushri is made in the beginning, because of the emphasis on the Abhidharma basket in this particular text.
What then that then Jagag is Nabi Chud Bel Mada Gonle Rojeja Ngel Janal Tasa users, Janal.
So
Nabi Jagag Nabi Nachude Ngel Jayul Teusers Jana.
Jayu.
Jayul Tane Rojeja Najagan Zan Jin Bel Diamors.
50, the Ksu, Atisha. The Yanja Suranang, Sapoyamare.
Sanjig Chud the channel royal channel.
Tambo.
Or Tambo channel royal. Channel Dana Rojeja Najagan Zan Jin Bel Sabadevers.
So first the teachings went to China, and they were there for 40 or 50 years before they arrived into Tibet. And then 40 or 50 years later, after China received the teachings, then they started to arrive into Tibet.
Janal Dan the or yeah. Dajabat Dan Japan Dan Korea Dan and Bidna what is on Tanu. Janaga now should what is on Tanu.
So the lineage of China then spread to Vietnam and Korea and Japan and some of those other places.
What is on that? Begana should Sobudan Janal Matayoris. Jagaga Himalaya.
So then the Tibetan Dharma spread to the Himalaya region, to various Himalaya places, as well as Mongolia and a little bit into China.
That Bell down Pidgin Nalendagi what the tool Hayong was Chituba what the Nalendan Kewing.
So the Tibetan Dharma is the same Dharma that was practiced in Nalanda because of the debate tradition.
That the Jagakedo Buddhapata pande bounce, jaga ke do Buddha pata pande bounce, sand da ke ane beba sul de jango ro beba sul ro. Beba sul sand da ke shege mare, bali shege mare, kare chinte te shawars lo ina goba yoris. Goba kare yoris na ane jagal ane kebandel sanji ton be gares. Sanji ton be ne chugu gudu kangaloge sand da ke na bali ke tul songres. Kel basha jabi she dungol javres.
So what's the reason for writing the Sanskrit name at the beginning of the text? Tibetans don't speak Sanskrit or Pali, and they wouldn't necessarily know what it said. There is an auspicious reason for doing this, and that's because of the 1,000 Buddhas that will come in this eon, all will teach in Sanskrit. So by putting the Sanskrit at the beginning of the text, it leaves predispositions in the practitioner's continuum for Sanskrit to be able to later meet with the Buddhas who will only teach in Sanskrit. So this is the reason for all the Tibetan texts having the title in Sanskrit at the beginning. It's been stated in a few commentaries that this is the reason for this. So it's probably this.
Ta niba jungi tuanxe bala son, niba jungi tuanxe bala son, cheba joba dan, zomba dan jawas, jungi lan joba hosa, ta tambo ne, ta langzhong ki wangongo duwa tingba, jaga ke du pandi bata se tsachi rwa. Ta tu son jawa ta dan ti chu, gandu na la guba chenpe shashi te, gandu na la guba chenpe shashi te sheba te. Tuanne tu son jawa tangchi ta dan, shebe, pontu zubi sanji kunchu dan, Ti chu shebe golanji dubi chu kunchu tang gandu na shebe redruji yuanden jidan tenbi gandu kunchu na la shanzeba yinos ti goba ne suyanan pijin bache shewa suji chedo osa ta tene haman tenba te sha chede jesha shena zhong zamba la Zhongzambalan Juji Changjawa was, Tambu Zawasa. Ta Gandinala Kubachin Shashi des, Gandinala Dusun Javata Tichu, Gandinala Kubachin Shashi de what they get, and the Juji Landron Godele, Gunshu Song Shasevaris, Gunshu Sanji Gunchu, Chu Gunchu, Gandin Gunchu, some of the Shasevers, Marbe, Tangazu. I take a double
So here it says, I pay homage with great respect to the conquerors of the three times, to their teachings and to those who aspire to virtue. And here, this is the homage section of this. And this is speaking of the conquerors of the three times, as well as the Dharma and the Sangha. So here, when we state, I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, this is exactly the same as I pay homage with great respect to the conquerors of the three times, who are the Buddhas, their teachings, which are the Dharma, and those who aspire to virtue, referring to the spiritual community or Sangha.
Ta Sanje Gunchu, Chu Gunchu, Genu Gunchu, Sanje de Memadaboris, Sanje de Daja Tumala Soba to Sanje Segaris, Sanje Seade, and the Numobi Shiji Jiba Golo, Numobatan, Shiji Jiba Tanji Bomba Yinzan, Sanje Sumarbe, Numoba Shiji Jiba Sang, Jesana, Sheja Tanji Lodri Jiba. Sansana, Numoba the Shiji Jiba Bomba. Numoba the Shiji Jiba. And Ponja Gangalo Sanjay Ponsavaro. Things was a sans in Mare. Ponja Ganga Ponsava in Ponja Tanji Samba in Sang, Ponja Tanji Pomba Yimbe, Sans, Jason Tanji Chamber. Sheja Tanji, Sanji Gama Chamber G. Maris, Sanji Amishure, Tanji Chamber is, or the Jason had the Tanji Chamber going Marita.
So here we speak of three jewels, the Buddha jewel, the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel. And the Buddha jewel, when we look at the Tibetan word Sangye, the Sang of that refers to the eradication of all afflictions obstructive afflictions, obstructions to omniscience, and and taking on of all good qualities. So the Sang here refers to the abandonment of these negativities, and the J refers to the omniscient or all-knowing nature of the Buddha. So here is the etymology of the word Sangje. The Sang is the eradication or abandonment of obstructions to omniscience, the afflictive obstructions as well as the obstructions to omniscience, and the attaining all of the good qualities. And the J refers to the omniscience or all-knowing mind.
다 상제도 용하라 타도 싫어 니라 되는 용구도 타도 싫어 샤지 자주 바로도 심발라 슈바니 라테는 자주 바로도 용구도 슈바니 매바는 자주 바로도 그래서 그래 샤드 자주 바로도 두 뻗나지 타시기 슈바니 라테네 안 상제고레스 안 가로도 강가로 상제야게 리여바 지바레 상제야게 너바여바 지바레 상제발라 타도 싫어 그러니 라테네 상제고레스 말이야.
But in order to become a fully enlightened Buddha, it's necessary to have both method and wisdom. Just like in order for a golden goose to fly over a great lake, he or she would need 2 wings to fly. In order to fly to enlightenment, it's necessary to have the 2 wings of method and wisdom for a practitioner. Without both method and wisdom, one will not arrive at the state of complete Buddhahood. And one thing I forgot is that the Buddha should be looked at as a doctor, the Dharma like medicine, and the Sangha or spiritual community as a nurse or aids in our journey.
어제 다드네 상제발 타도 싫어니도 간에 구하르스나 되는 가서 동에 뇨대야다 동에게 가르쳐 그래. 뇨모죠 말은 지소라 달레숑 루유 통주도 다는데 유도 도신 내주바이 다는 거 봐시스. 안에 동에다 안에 동에 그걸로 레라되는 군주라되는 종류 와르스. 레다 뇨모비 군주도 덴진라되는 종류 와서 말베 덴진. 덴진라되는 종류 와르스. 덴진데 기 마바토비 돈이도비 싫어드면나 안에 덴진 본토 말에 덴진 마보나 덴진기 집이 뇨모바들레 본토 말에 데 마보나 대집이 로아리도 등행 본토 말에스 대기 소자 싫어 돈이도비 싫어든가 보고 그러는데 인사래.
So first, when we look at the wisdom realizing emptiness, when we analyze suffering, we'll see that suffering is caused. Suffering is caused by karma and afflictions. And those karma and afflictions are caused at grasping at true existence. So the wisdom realizing emptiness acts as an antidote to the grasping at true existence. And once you apply an antidote to the grasping at true existence, or grasping at true establishment, once the antidote has been applied, then what it produces is eradicated, the karma and afflictions, and then one no longer has to have the results of those karma and afflictions. So this is why it's necessary to have the wisdom realizing emptiness, because it cuts the root of cyclic existence.
어떻게 동행그 싸와 타도와도 댄진들이 와서 말বে 댄진데 안 콜로로시레스 댄진이 집이 녀모바다 어두속가 로시레스 데 로시에 소자 네 추나 대바 마주버도비 네 댄 돈이도비 싫어도요 바이나 되네 대바 마주버도비 돈이도비 싫어도로 댄바레스 더 공바이나 안에 로로시드 갈레갈렌지 원하신서스 돌로 주는 가서 잡았다네 돌로 담아 차용도 됐나지 안에 돈이도비 싫어다 어떤게 아부 공바이나 댄진다 안에 녀모발라수비 셀 자마드갈레 다네 다원신서스.
So applying the antidote of the wisdom realizing emptiness can slowly lessen the grasping at true existence. And if this grasping at true existence is eradicated, then its effect is also eradicated. So one can slowly familiarize his or herself with the practices, the wisdom practices that will eventually lead to the abandonment of this grasping in true existence, which will lead to the abandonment of the karma and afflictions which produce suffering. So it's necessary to have this wisdom present in order to abandon suffering.
어제 다 돈이라 미비 돈이 대하고 시사수나 텔레민 띵해주고 하동 토바이나 되네 댄진레
So then one familiarizes his or herself with this wisdom, and then, through single-pointed concentration, arrives at a union of calm abiding and special insight. And this calm abiding and special insight then lessens the afflictions more and more and more.
Tapana ngaso lhatan na pogo chuchun lhatan jabane A B C tamu A B C D mashibin tamundu was e norundu was A B C suna mashiba tamu jingarundu was mo C suna tamu mo garundu was then ajin toni C suna toni mashibi tamu dangaru was deba ni C suna ni mashibi what the kale kalanga jo things.
When a child goes to school, he or she has the ignorance relative to the English alphabet, A, B, C, D. But slowly, by studying the English alphabet, he or she can eradicate the ignorance relative to the English alphabet. Likewise, we have ignorance relative to the two truths and the Four Noble Truths and so forth. But by constantly practicing and engaging in analysis of these, then we can slowly eradicate the ignorance relative to the true truths, and the ignorance relative to the Four Noble Truths, and the ignorance relative to emptiness, and so on. So it's by constant analysis and engaging in practice that we can eradicate these. Chishina karma nga and chuwadan lenja dan huwa.
Then Taba drew the Lolo was Taba drew my image to Lodon. Taba drew my image on drinking Lodon was Jibadun was.
It's similar also to shaking a rope for a snake. If a person walks into a room and sees a rope and thinks it's a snake, then he or she might become fearful. But once the recognition that that rope is a rope and the snake is it's not a snake is present, then the fears and so forth are completely eradicated, and the ignorance relative to that rope is also eradicated. So it's very similar to this.
Well, then I that don't let me belong. Tolan, Jolan, Tolan, Golan to what the land is. Tolan Golan to Chugonju, Tolan in waters, Tolan is on the Gonedaland, the Chugonju waters.
So the real Dharma jewel is the cessation and the path of seeing, the true cessations and true paths, and that is actually reached at the path of seeing.
So the
Sangha, spiritual community, is very similar to the nurse. When we go to a hospital, we have an aide or a helper along the journey, and that's what the spiritual community is likened to.
So
here, where it says, this is the homage to the three jewels.
That conjures on good sugar or that do so Java Datan, do so Java Datan Saturday, Sanji Conju Tengores, do so Java Datan, Sanji Conju. The choose at the Chu Conju go down on the Tengores, Gaduna Saturday, Sangat Neomarbe.
So here the conquerors of three times refer to the Buddhas. Their teachings refer to the Dharma, and those who aspire refer to the Sangha, or spiritual community.
That the Landungulo Conjus on the Carigin Shasavasana. Then Conjus on the Shasagina and Conjus on Payunde, the Lishasava in the Sonacha Sagres, Sanji and Samajo, Chujin and Samajo, Ganu and Samajo, Samajabala Tishibi, Nabama on Samachas, Conjus on the Samajava in Sunda. The Lishate, Sonate, and love which is Sanjimajava in what is, so not chewing what is Marbe.
So why is this homage paid? The three jewels have such vast, excellent qualities. By paying this homage, it will increase the merit and aid in successful completion of this actual text. So the reason for this homage or prostration at the beginning is to accumulate merit because of the excellent qualities that these bases of the prostration are made to.
건조송을 샤세게이나 되는 가르치고는 회사에 디바다 그래. 소나 집어서 그래. 되네 가서 그래. 내 손을 제거 말해. 던을 제거 그래. 타바도 그래. 안 사주 가서 그래. 전주 편에는 무슨 요로.
So there's many benefits of taking refuge. We'll be able to purify our misdeeds. We'll be able to accumulate a large amount of merit. We will be relieved from the lower realms. We will be able to achieve the state of the higher realms. We will be able to achieve the state of liberation or individual nirvana. We will be able to achieve the state of complete Buddhahood. So it's upon that that we can practice those things.
어제 다드네 와데 가서 담바 뭐베 개체메지라 개득가 이렇게 나와주나 돌아를 못 잡았다면 시행하셔야죠. 알레. 어디 가서 소나 때문에 미기 상반나죠. 소나 때문에 미기 상반나죠. 건조송을 샤세게나 소나 접어서 그래서 소나 접어 여봐이나 아니 그런 란드 마테리얼 바제 용 말이스. 아니 네 소소 상바 최투 상바 가려 여봐이나 강도 용 그래서 어디서 그 말이다.
So the other reason already stated for the reason for this homage is if one accumulates a great amount of merit, then obstructions are relieved. And here the obstructions are obstructions that might hinder the composition of this text. So here the homage is paid, so the merit is increased, so the obstructions are eradicated.
어제 다 주주도 왔더래서 줘봐 어때?
So here this is the expression of homage at the beginning of the text.
줘봐서 근데
Expression of
줘봐서나
homage.
제단 줘봐서나 산들다게도 번자서 말이야 번자서 줘발라고 그래서 줘봐 번자서는 가르쳐고서나 산제라서 더 녀발 줘보고 그래서 산제를 샤세바이나 산제 녀부 용 그래서 루비 줘봐 말이야.
And when we hear we talk of homage, and when they've explained what homage, our offering of homage means, it's offering of a homage that would please the victorious ones. So something which is pleasing to the victorious ones.
다 좀바 당자 다 지금 오래다 야.
So I think that we're going to end because we have about 15 minutes and we want to do questions, and we also have all the dedications to do. And we'll get Rinpoche out of here for noon so he can eat and stuff. So do we want to do questions or dedication first?
Questions, please.
Tambo Triwa.
Yeah, okay.
So about 10 minutes worth of
I
questions.
have a quick question, which is I noticed that Lord Atisha's ordination name is Deepamkara Sri Jan.
Srijan, yeah.
And so I was wondering if the Deepam part is the lamp also.
Oh, okay. The Atisha's Sanwa Ming, the Deepam Kara. Deepam, the Landun Dan Drabudwe.
대방은 안 잡으면 돼. 로아. 대방 가라.
Deepam and Dön.
대방. 베지면 로아. 데이트 카도 라린 첨부
Look in the Lamrim Chemo, he said.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry. The Sanskrit is sometimes difficult.
Rinpoche said that the Hinayanists, after the time of Lord Buddha's passing into Nirvana, stated that the Mahayana texts were not true Buddhist teaching.
Correct.
Especially because they stated that there was nihilism. If one asserts that based on what they perceive as a logical conclusion, does that create the karma of denigrating the Dharma?
The Kontriwa, the Lama, the Techen, the Temepa, Ke Langudu, the Sherp Nimpo, the Luta Yimba. Then Konsu the Deepa Sadhu, the Luta Yimba, like the Ke Lena, then the Deepa Sadhu, Gangen Sen, the Konsu, the Becha Mambo Dasan, then the Jutsen Mambo Yure, then Konsu Deepa Sadhu.
디바 사그레스 디바. 로루 마페 공개 시다 마한도도 봐서 그 구반되고 그랬어. 실언이부 소지 까마레스. 제주도 소지 까마레스 구반되고 그랬어. 로달라고 그랬어. 근데 로루 페 자두 시다 마한도도 봐서 그 로달라고 말했어. 다두게 시신 킬랭 그랬어. 다들 가서 놓아셨어.
So at the time before Nagarjuna showed up in a sangha, they did assert that these were wrong teachings, that these were actually not teachings of the Buddha, and this was non-virtue. This was an accumulation of misdeeds by denigrating the Dharma and saying that something was not Dharma that was, and it was wrong view. But after the great master Nagarjuna came and so forth, they pretty much stopped. The Shedamawa, the Great Exposition School and the Satrantika School pretty much stopped doing that.
고마그 조사 자월도 티진 관감문데 신도타스 티진 관감문도 신도타스 로루 마페 공게 시다마완도 속에 시다마완도 바속에 티진 가도 상지그 송켈량 말레스 너그 말레스 로루 회사게 제소 시다마완도 바속에 시신도 상지가 켈량 그랬어.
So there's a statement that says, before Nagarjuna arrived, the great expositions and the sutra following the sutra schools asserted that the Mahayana was not the teaching of Lord Buddha, that the Heart Sutra was not the teaching of Lord Buddha. But after Nagarjuna arrived, this was cleared away, and they asserted that they were. Yes? Abhidharma, this Manjushri. Omniscience.
If someone has a wish-fulfilling jewel, couldn't they wish for enlightenment?
You should norbo yuna. Then ngay the shanchum drongo. The la tudwe. Ngay Sanjay then drongo. Say there ngay Sanjay drongo. The lana. Yishi normal yuna. If you have one, you should ask it to become Buddha. Yes.
Who brought the Buddhist teachings to China, and why did they turn out to be more on the manifestation?
And the Hinayana, the Su, the Jaila, the Nampichu Kherson Su. Maybe somebody else, maybe you might know. We don't know. It's a great Chinese scholar. We don't know the name of him. Then Garishene, the Teme Chu Manga Yure, the Jaina. The Kong Ke Langadu, the Jaina La, the Teme Chu Mambo Yure. They have both Hinayana and Mahayana in China. They have a great deal of Mahayana teachings in China. Big, large amount. They don't have as much Tantra, but a lot of Mahayana. Okay, Nalamane, okay.
Chana lendos, ina chana number so shidaga sangwajine. Then the shinda
I see. So at first, highest yoga tantra did arrive in China. You can see it in a book, but practitioners kept it so secret that the lineage was ruined. It was gone. It's possible now they do have some tantric teachings in China. Maybe the action performance in yogic tantras. One more question, maybe? Sure.
What is the difference between realizing emptiness and omniscient mind?
Doni dupi sherap dang nanchen chapagari.
Doni dupi shera sena nachen doni dupi shera ya shudu yoris nachen kos. Then doni dupi shera then ma karasugure. Cholang gosu yore, cholang matu gonle yore. Then nga chue jange ina and doni she tugures. Then gale doni dupi shera go. Doni yana ya to gon shanchu sen gon doni gona deba ma da nugres. And doni dupi shera nachen cha nugres.
So the difference between the wisdom realizing emptiness and omniscience is an omniscient mind recognizes emptiness in its clearest level. But if one has the wisdom realizing emptiness, it does not necessarily mean they are omniscient, because one reaches the wisdom realizing emptiness at various levels in the path. So one reaches the path of seeing, they have a direct perception and then come out of it. And there are more and more subtle levels that one recognizes, and more subtle levels of the misdeeds or imprints are eradicated to the point that one then arrives at omniscience. So it's necessary to have the wisdom realizing emptiness to arrive at omniscience. But if one has the wisdom realizing emptiness, it does not necessarily mean that he or she is omniscient.
Why do you know that? How do you know that?
How do I know that?
How does one know that?
Then kandre hakodu. Then kandre su shinglu.
What thing that I get push you out is ABC 보고 넘버 ABC 제일 먼저 왔어. 근데 ABC 해서나 그 뭐시받은 거 하는 거 왔어. 근데 돈이서 그 해서나 뭐시받은 거더 뭔가.
We can see in the normal world that we can learn things. We can have an ignorance, like we said before, of the English language, and then that ignorance can be eradicated. So our mind is pliable and has the ability to eradicate ignorance to whatever topic one has ignorance of. So that's a reason why slowly the ignorance can be eradicated.
갈라지기 보고 시세 도부도 너무 그저 애들은 뭐 모여와서 로정진 애들은 가는고 시세 도부 사서.
Before one got to college, they had large amounts of ignorance. They went through the progression of schooling and got there and didn't.
전나지 매생도 정보인도 그 남비 줄 대바니다 대바지던 장나 what
So because the human mind can engage in analysis, we can analyze the two truths and the four truths and start to eradicate that grasping at true existence slowly. Yes?
Remember, she also spoke about the importance of ethics, though, on these stages.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that, maybe 3 or 4 things about ethics you could tell us to sort of think about, or a way of behavior in this abiding in ethics is very important.
The Tsutrim, the Nama Charan de Labs, Ke Lanson, the Lapasum, Tsutrim, Ke Chempore, the Garishene Tsutrim Ke Chempore. Tsutrim Don the Gare, Tsutrim Garishene Ke Chempore.
So did the 10 Judam Sajin to then go to den levels, Govalurus. But not Saji the Abayona. And the Lishi Jagano, Modu Jagano, don't do Jangures, Modern to Tugres, Northern to Tugres, Saja the Abumena, and the Modern Shindu the Kain and Jagunduas, Chuding Saja the Abuyona, and the Latin Jabu Chung Chung Ware, Ding Chung Ware, Jabu Chimbi Chung Ware, what the song was.
It's been stated by the great master Nagarjuna, but without the foundation of ethics, the latter fruits will not come. And here the meaning is, if one has a very stable ground and it's very level and so forth, one can plant things on it, one can drive a car on it, drive a train on it, drive a motorcycle on it, and is able to use that ground if it's very stable. If it is unstable, then none of those things can be done. Likewise, it's necessary to have this stable foundation of ethics in order for the latter realizations to come. Without the stable foundation of ethics, none of the other things will be realized.
Sudi Dabana Lujugun Sujevano to Sujegina, Nanson Lugres, Sul Dungayungres, the Gagina, the Lugres, Jibungres, what the shade woman.
It's very similar to like when we look at the unethical behavior of the body, for instance, killing. If we kill and have 3 factors present, then we will be born into the lower realms, or hell realms. But if we abstain from killing or engage in the virtue of abstaining from killing, then we will be reborn into the higher realms. So this is another explanation of what ethics is. Maybe we'll do the dedication.
Okay.
This is great. Thank you, whoever made these copies. It was very helpful for me.
Dedication.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have a book.
Georgia on top of it, it looks like this.
And what about the mandala?
That's including model option.
Okay. Isn't the mandala first?
So, just a offering and dedication prayer, and then after that, we'll do the Samanta Varta dedication that has the picture of the Dorje printed on top, and then we have long life prayers for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Khensur Rinpoche, and Geshe Lharampa, who's in India right now, is one of our other teachers. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewed with
flowers. The mountain may rule the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this. May all such beings dedicate all their virtues.
And in particular, the essential teachings of Venerable Buddha to shine forever.
I send forth this mala to you, precious Guru.
dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of Nirvana.
Likewise, Smantabhadra as well.
With whatever dedications and praise is supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds.
Yamba Monya Nandhavana Gundu Sambo Deyande Shinte Deda Kunji Jesu Daloche Gewa Deda Tanche Ratu Mo Nuzon Jibe Jewa Tanche Owa Kama Chotu Mapade Dajen Gewe Sawa Dikun Jam Sambo Chuji Radu Owa Ji.
In the heavenly realms,
That's the rising of snow mountains. Tenzin Gyatso, Chenrezig in person. May his life be secure for hundreds of kalpas. Ngari Rawe Kowe Shin Yom Nir Menam Dewa Manu Joe Chenrezig Tenzin Yazoi Shamezi for the long life of precious Khensur Rinpoche, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance.
The light of your wisdom dispels the darkness obscuring the five scriptures. Joyously uphold the sublime teachings of Sutra and Tantra through the three doors. We constantly apply perseverance to your perfected learning and reflection. May your venerable Geshe Lharampa remain for a long time.
If anybody would like to make offerings, we have cocktails out here.
How you doing? Hey, Abbot. Hey, Abbot.
Kale kale shine
Wait.
I actually don't know. Should we turn the texts back in, or are we going to keep them, or what's our story?
If you can remember to bring them.
Yeah, if you're committing to come to all the teachings, it's kind of on like your honor. If you bring these, you know, it does cost money to make them, so if you want to bring them home.
Not that much.
Also, take care of them if you're going to take them home.
Yeah, good point, Doug.
Keep them really, it costs pennies. It's actually no big deal.
But like Doug was saying, make sure you don't put them on the floor, put them in a high place. Really take care of them.
This is on behalf of the center, to you from the center. Thank you. And this is for me. Thank you. Thank you.
Two cocktails.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
And Jeff, this is on behalf of the center.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What are you doing for lunch, Dren? You gonna cook for him, or? I have to go immediately, unfortunately. Yeah, thank you so much.